So, guys, we have to now say thank you to the government for another piece of legislation. I think that probably puts us at about 185 now for you to comply with, and for us to comply with, and for us to learn and train and understand. And I just wanted to say, I don't know if many of you are members of Facebook groups and property groups and so forth, but I've seen a lot around the electrical safety standards in the private rented sector lately, whereby people believe that this piece of legislation has been scrapped. I'm here to confirm to you that absolutely that is not the case. It came into force, it was given royal assent 1st of June 2020, came into force on that date, but it only affected tenancies that was from the 1st of July, so today. What was scrapped was some guidance that they issued, government guidance that they issued for us to read through and comply with the legislation. Very quickly, Arla had realised that the guidance didn't make sense, and there was a note in there that said all tenancies from the 1st of June 2020 needed an electric certificate, and that is why that piece of guidance was withdrawn. The legislation is still here. So let's move on and just talk about the electrical safety. And again, if you've got any questions, ping them in the group. Ali will ask me at the end of the section. Right, so as of today, any tenancy that you enter into must have a 5-year EICR before the tenancy starts. So the way I'd say this to you is, landlords, you've had gas regulations now for many years. I think 1994 it came into play, so we're talking 26 years. View this as a gas certificate. We all know that we need a gas certificate and we need to give the tenant a copy before they move in. Please view this in the same respect, okay? So before you move a tenant into a property now, as of today, you will need to provide the tenant with a 5-year EICR up to 18th edition. Now, this is where the queries are. So if you have got any questions, let me know. Right, the criteria surrounding this is that the landlord must supply a copy of the latest report to any new tenant before occupation. Okay, so before you hand over the keys, you must provide them. And I'm just going to put this word in here because I presume you all would know this, but I just want to be clear. It needs to be a valid, satisfactory electrical certificate. An electrical certificate that has got code 1s and code 2s on it will not be a satisfactory, current, valid 5-year EICR, okay? You also have to provide it to any prospective tenant within 28 days of a request. So what that means is if I want to view your property and I give you a call and say, hi, can I view your property? And by the way, can I have a copy of your electric certificate? You have to provide that. Sorry, not view your property, if I apply for your property. So if I apply for your property and I pay you a holding fee, and I say, can I see the electric, sir? You must provide that to me within 28 days. This is one of the key things to remember here, okay? This is really important, that it's all new tenancies, but what in the eyes of the law, due to Super Strike v. Rodriguez, renewals of tenancy is deemed a new tenancy. So when you enter into a new fixed term, so let's say, for example, a tenancy is due to end on the 30th of July, and I wish to renew it on the 31st, before I can conduct the renewal of tenancy, I have to have an EICR. Do not renew that tenancy until you have an EICR in place, because you will be in breach of the law. So I've put here on the slide, must not renew until it is done. Statutory periodic tenancies, guys. This is a challenge, okay? I've talked about statutory periodic tenancies now probably for about 4 years, because there was a massive case called Leeds City Council v. Broadley, where the justification from that case basically said, when a tenancy goes into a rolling contract, it can do so in one of either two ways. It can either go into a contractual monthly rolling contract if there is wording in the tenancy to allow it to do so. If there isn't wording in the tenancy to allow it to do so, it goes into what's called a statutory periodic tenancy. And a statutory periodic tenancy, put my teeth in, statutory periodic tenancy effectively becomes a new tenancy every single month. So if you have a tenancy that is about to end on the 10th of July, and you don't have those magic words in your contract to make it a contractually rolling tenancy, you're going to have to get an electric check done, because you will be falling foul of this legislation if you don't. This is quite a confusing thing. So if there is any questions about this, please do pop them in there. If there's any questions at the end of it, please let me know. If any of you want to contact me direct, please do so. But this is really important. You could fall foul to these this piece of legislation and not know. This, guys, it applies to all tenancies. So company lets, non-housing tenancies, ASTs, assured tenancies, all private rented sector tenancies this applies to, apart from those where a landlord is renting out a room. So a lodger agreement, that is the only type of tenancy in the private rented sector that doesn't require an electric certificate. So it's probably going to affect 99% of you, I'd say, if not 99.9. Something to bear in mind here, guys, is that when you buy a new build, for example, you normally get an electrical installation certificate, and that comes with a 10-year certificate. Now, an electrical installation certificate is acceptable under these regulations as being deemed suitable for the purposes of the regulations. However, the regulations state that you have to have a 5-year certificate, not a 10. So an example is here. If your electrical installation report was 2017, we could accept that from you and we could use it for all new tenancies, but only until 2022, which is when the 5 years out of the 10 would be up. If, however, you had an electrical installation certificate in 2015, we couldn't use that now because the 5 years has passed. I hope you understand where I'm coming from. It has to be within 5 years, and it has to be renewed at the expiry of every 5-year term. Now, landlords who this doesn't apply to at the moment, please be ready, because all tenancies, every single tenancy retrospectively, is going to have to comply with these legislation and have a valid EICR by April of next year. Now, that isn't very long away. It's not very far away at all. So please just prepare yourself. And I will say to you guys that I'd probably say Ali's more knowledgeable to this, knowledgeable about this than me. But I think I'd say as high as 60 to 70% of the EICRs that we've had carried out have required work, because they are so in depth. They're very detailed electrical safety checks. So what I'm saying is try and get it done that little bit sooner to make sure that you can comply. Okay, so what happens if you get a failed certificate? There's some other bits of legislation you need to consider, okay? You need to do this to comply. So if you have a failed certificate with a code 1 or 2, you must complete those, you must remedy those issues within 28 days or prior to the start of tenancy for new tenancies. So if you're doing an electric cert with a tenant already in situ, you have 28 days to remedy it. If you're doing it for a new tenancy, you have to do it before they move in. Now, this is an interesting part of the legislation that I was unaware of. You have to provide a copy of the failed certificate, and evidence of the remedy must be sent to the local housing authority within 28 days. Now, how do we do that? Where do we send it? Who do we send it to? Some of the things that have been said about this is that we need to consider that we as agents and potentially you as landlords could be in breach of GDPR if you're sending personal information to a generic email address. So the suggestion that I'm making is speak to your local authority where you have properties. It's likely to be in your local housing department or your environmental health department. Ask them where you should be sending your failed electric certificates to. It's very likely that they won't have a clue what you're talking about. Ask them to confirm that to you in writing. Keep that on your file. Okay, if you then do get failed certificates, please just make an attempt to again try and get an email address or contact where you can send it to, and again, document that so you can protect yourself. Now, I'm saying this out to you all as landlords, okay? And remember, I'm an agent. So I'm saying to you now, this piece of legislation is not agent liable, it is landlord liable. So I'm saying to you now, for those landlords that use us and have their management with us, we would be liable to you for failing to comply with the legislation under our terms of business. But please check, if you're using an alternative agent, that your agent, if they fail to meet these regulations and pieces of legislation and you end up with a fine, that they are actually contractually liable to keep you safe and make sure that they're doing everything that they can. Because what I'm saying to you is this falls on the landlord, whether you're managed or not. So just check your terms of business with your agent to make sure your agent is carrying the responsibility of carrying out these checks on your behalf. Proven breaches of the regulation. So what are the penalties? Wow, the penalties are up to £30,000, coming straight from the local housing authority, which means they get to keep the money. So bear in mind, guys, this is going to be another way that they can put some money in their pot, and God knows they're going to need it now after Corona. Just a key thing to point out, this does not form part of the Deregulation Act requirements. So if you fail to provide the certificate to the tenant prior to the start of tenancy, you will still be able to serve Section 21 notice. But as best practice, I would encourage you all to add this document to your deregulation pre-tenancy pack so that you're just doing it as a matter of course.